Some viewers may find this content disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Harley Owens, my friend and fellow Dogman and cryptid hunter. Yes, this must mean it is time for you and I once again to team up for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. Yet please allow me to feed. Now that I am fully recharged and ready, are you ready, Harley, to take a walk into the darkness? My creatures of the night, yes, welcome back to another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. We have Harley Owens, who is a reoccurring host on our podcast, once again stopping in tonight with some very terrifying information and updates as to what he has been up to. And Harley is also a member of the North American Dogman Project in the Tennessee area. My dude, how are you?
I am doing extremely well, and I am looking forward to this one tonight, y'all. You're going to be excited for this one, and hopefully I can give y'all some information and just raise awareness a little bit more about the Dogman phenomenon here in Tennessee and, quite frankly, across the country.
Couldn't agree better, my friend. Well stated. And I am going to toss you the microphone and let you take center stage. And let's dance, my friend.
All righty. So, for those that don't know me, my name is Harley Owens. I'm from East Tennessee. I have a Facebook group, Bigfoot Reports and Data. My main focus at first, was the Bigfoot phenomenon, and I've had 3 encounters with a Bigfoot. My first was in 2020, and my first Dogman encounter happened January 29th of this year. So, little backstory on how this encounter happened. I think I'm going to go out to my normal research area, and I don't. I ended up going further up the mountain. But before I went further up the mountain, I went to another location where I ended up finding some tree structures and some different signs of the Bigfoot. And I mean, it was promising for me to potentially come to this area and start researching more, but it really wasn't enough. Went back to the truck and I went further up the mountain to this other trailhead. And I'm walking along this trailhead. There's laurels everywhere, laurel trees, a very thick cover that the Sasquatch utilize, and so did the Dogman. So I'm walking and I cross this couple of little creeks, and I'm working my way around this mountain, and I come back down and cross another little creek that has a culvert in it, and I go up this hill, and the trail forks, and it goes left and right. The trail to the right wasn't very well maintained by the park services, so I decided to go left and go further up the mountain. And I'm walking along up through here, and this game trail cuts across the trail, and I decided to go on this game trail. So I cut right off in this game trail, and I found two huge twist breaks that the Sasquatch do. That's a telltale sign of the Sasquatch, because these trees are twisted and broken. So the one that I noticed first, it was probably about 8.5 feet up off the ground, because I'm 6'6", and I could reach up and just barely be able to reach the break. And it was twisted and broken and facing up the mountain. But the other one, it was probably 12, 13 feet off the ground, and it was twisted and broke facing down the mountain. Now, I was looking at that, and I was like, well, could this have been a wind? And I'm just sitting here looking, and there was no other trees broke. And I was like, well, this is Bigfoot. I mean, this is fresh. And I'm like, I'm going to run into another Bigfoot. And that's honestly what I thought. I was going to have another Bigfoot encounter on this day. And I was filming a little bit on my phone. I didn't have a back trail camera going, so I was walking along with my little handheld device that I had my phone in, and I was walking along, and I come up to a curve in this trail, and I looked at my phone before I went around this curve. I had 30% battery, and I go around the curve, and my phone says 10% battery, and it shut off. And I was like, well, this is deja vu from all over again. And for those that didn't know my first Bigfoot encounter, I looked up and got a picture of this Bigfoot, but I was zapped, what they call zapping. These creatures can emit a sound above or below our hearing that can tamper with technology. So I was like, well, I'm just going to have to encounter with something right here. I was like, it's going to be a Bigfoot. So I turned around and I come back around the curve, and I didn't walk 10, 15 feet, and I heard movement behind me rustling in the leaves. And I was like, okay, I'm going to turn, and it's going to be there, and it's going to be a Bigfoot. I'm like, it's going to happen. So I stopped at the tracks, and I turned towards where the noise was, and I see it. This huge, dark brown canine with the brightest yellow eyes, and they were almost glowing. And this was getting dusky dark. It was starting to snow a little bit, and this is back in January. I'm further up on the mountain, and this thing pushes itself up from the ground with its forearms, and it takes 3 steps, and it's right here in front of me, 15, 20 yards away. I mean, it was right there. And it's had its arm propped up against the tree, and it had its other arm reaching out like it was trying to grab me. And this thing had a mane running down the back of its neck. It had these huge ears like a German Shepherd's. The top of its head, in between its ears, was flat. Its nose was snudged up into the muzzle. The eyes were so piercing. They were bright yellow. It was like this creature was looking right through me. My life was flashing before my eyes. The hands were very raccoon-like. I don't know if anybody's ever seen a raccoon's hands up close, but these were like a raccoon's hands, but like times 10. But these were very eerie-looking hands with large claws on the end of them. Had almost like fox's tail that was big and poofy like a fox's tail. Had forward-facing legs like a human. I always heard the stories of the Dogman having backwards-facing legs. This one that I seen did not have backwards-facing legs. It had forward-facing legs. The upper half of this thing's body was very wide, and the bottom half of it was very thin. So this thing's looking at me, and it's growling and snarling, and when it's breathing, I could see the air coming out of it, and because it was so cold. And I packed light, and I was just ready to get out of there. I did not expect to run into this creature. So the only thing I knew how to do was run, and I took off and I started running, and this thing started chasing me, and I'm running around. I've got buck boots on. How in the world I did not fall, I don't know. I guess it was by the grace of God, but this thing was chasing me, and it was chasing me from off the trail, and I was staying on the trail. I was running and trying not to fall. I go down and I cross the creek with the culvert, and I'm going up and I'm running through the woods, and I hear this thing crashing through the woods chasing me, and I come to this first bridge that I had to come across. I crossed it, and then I get to the second bridge, and then that thing just stopped. It just stopped chasing me.
Jeez, some crow right there. I mean, I've obviously heard you explain that to me before, and I've listened to your encounter numerous times as I edited it into the video that we had. But just sitting there and listening to that and processing it, it's definitely some straight up nightmare fueling.
Oh yes, absolutely. I had a follow-up investigation that same week. I had a friend of mine from Virginia come down. His name's Rick, and we ended up getting the estimation on how big this creature was. was 8 feet tall, not including the ears, because there was a mark on the tree actually where it had scratched the tree. And the stride from where this creature was laying to where it went in front of me was 28 feet, and it cleared that in 3 steps. And then this this was the kicker. This thing had a 17-inch across head. It was a very huge creature, and it was almost 4 feet across at the shoulders. Very large, very intimidating creature.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And I never knew you were 6'6". That's pretty cool, man. I'm only 6'1". I used to play semi-pro soccer, and I was a goalie, and I was considered to have good height for a goalie. And yeah, you're 6'6". That's definitely much larger. So seeing something that you felt dwarfed you is pretty, again, nightmare fuel.
Oh, I mean, it is with the Bigfoot too. I mean, I feel puny compared to the Bigfoot. You know, the most of the Bigfoot I've seen are consistent with that height, but the Dogman, it's a nightmare fuel, like you say. I mean, they're creatures that defy comprehension, just like the Bigfoot do, but in other ways. I mean, I mean, I'm sure the Bigfoot will too, but the Dogman, I mean, we're a prey item for them.
That actually leads me into my next set of questions for you before you continue on. I wanted to, again, just get your thought on a few different aspects. How do you feel about gifting in general? And before you answer that, though, not just say towards Bigfoot, but also especially towards the Dogman, because one of my really good friends, Jessica Jones, and also one of my other really good friends, Barb Hartman, were speaking just about their opinions on how they thought gifting wasn't the best choices, more or less. And I just wanted to, like I said, get your thoughts on that, because I've also had some of my friends tell me, actually, one of my good friends from Canada was speaking about how he had heard that when gifting doesn't necessarily go the way of whatever they're trying to gift, that it comes and starts slamming and banging on their cabin. And I asked Barb about that, and she said she's heard that a ton of times. So I wanted to hear, is this something people should be doing? Because I don't think they should be, but could you elaborate?
Oh no, I would not do it. No, 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 no. That's a big no. You're messing with creatures that defy your comprehension. I used to gift. I would feed them apples, and I stopped because they would follow me home, and they would hit on the trash can, or they would be outside. I would feel the presence of being watched, and I had one smack the house at one time. My stepdaughter's dad was with me, and one literally smacked the house. And you know, you're messing with creatures that don't uh, they don't quite frankly care about us. They are highly intelligent, and I wouldn't do it. Just from my personal experiences, I know I've been gifting the Bigfoot, but I couldn't imagine somebody gifting the Dogman. Those things they're sinister and they're crafty. If you fool around and make them mad, they'll come after you. I'm almost guarantee it. I'm sure that they would try to get in the house. The Bigfoot, they're just like, hey, you're slacking. You gotta feed them. But the
Yeah.
Dogman, I feel like they would barge right in. And that's my honest personal opinion on that.
Excellent. No, I appreciate that, and I couldn't agree more. And the real big reason I asked is I'm going to call it a story, because it hasn't been debunked, and yet it can't really be verified, more or less, because I was just able to speak to the mother, and I didn't speak to anybody else, nor the daughter yet. So, like I said, I don't know fully, but it's an interesting case. And what she had claimed unfolded is that her daughter would always be by the bushes feeding something, and it would say "Mommy, the large dog in the woods," or "Mr. Dog in the woods," etc. And yeah, the mother went over one time to see where all the food was going, why her daughter was feeding or whatever she was feeding. And she said when she went over there, she saw basically this creature more or less, that looked like people say the Dogman looks like, pulling and taking the meat or whatever her daughter was pushing over towards it, and she said it scared the living crap out of her.
I
So
mean, yeah. I mean, they're nightmare fuel, man. I mean, you see one of these creatures, all these depictions of werewolves and stuff in movies. It's spot on of a dogman. There's truth in a science fiction.
wow, that's terrifying. We at the North American Dogman Project, and you know this because you're part of it, we break it
Yep.
down into 3 different categories, more or less, either paranormal, extraterrestrial, and physical, because that's the type of reports we've gotten, and it ranges, and I
Mhm.
fall into the category of believing that, yes, people are seeing and experiencing physical things, yet I also get reports and have heard reports like from Linda Godfrey where she had spoken about the spectral looking dog man on Bray Road. And there's a ton of reports like that. And then there's also some that maybe point towards it could be extraterrestrial base. Do you think that, like I stated, that you agree with any of that, but also do you think maybe if it was some of the paranormal type aspects that it could be, how everyone knows we're scared of werewolves and stuff. If it
Mhm.
was, say, an evil entity, do you think it might just also be taking on the form of, say, a werewolf because it knows it would terrify us?
Oh, I believe that they're interdimensional beings. I believe they're supernatural, interdimensional beings. And I mean, they can physically be here. They can physically leave tracks. They can physically leave signs of their presence, but they can also, at the same time, not be here. Just like the Bigfoot. That's the same way that I lean towards the Bigfoot. How do you find tracks and then the tracks just magically disappear out of thin air? I mean, that you have to ask yourself these questions. Like the Land Between the Lakes. That place is on a whole nother level than anywhere else on this planet. You've got Bigfoot, you've got Dogman, you've got supernatural stuff, and there's you gotta start asking yourself these questions. I always tell everybody, keep an open mind. It never hurts anything to keep your mind open and look outside of the box and look at the bigger picture. Like tracks just don't disappear. You just don't follow tracks and then they just disappear. So I mean, I just want to encourage anybody, just keep your mind open.
Very valid point right there. And no, that brings up 2 scenarios. And I can verify one side and I cannot the other. If it is physical, like Nuxium, our tracker, aka Brother Nature, Stephen Barrios, he's out on the West Coast. He was saying though as well that these animals, creatures use trees just like Bigfoot do as well, and that when you're out in the forest, you should really be looking up, not always down. And sometimes in a lot of these cases, because I've also taken a lot of these encounters and spoke to numerous witnesses explaining about how this dog man leapt like easily into the trees and was going from tree to tree. And there's been cases that makes me think that sometimes, depending on obviously the environment, if you're in the middle of say the desert or something, or an area there's no trees near you, then the tracks disappear. Well, okay, that's some interesting stuff. But if you're in the
Yes.
forest, right, and the tracks are all of a sudden disappear, I think it's leaping back up into the trees and just pop, pop, pop. And the reason I say that is there was a case from Kingston, New York, that's nightmare fuel, where 2 guys were on like an ATV at night because some sort of dogman like creature was terrorizing his one of the guy's wife and had scared the cattle. But either way, after they shot at point blank, it definitely screamed, blood flew everywhere, it coughed up and spun around. But after it staggered, it leapt into the tree, climbed up it super quick, howled out in pain, and then leapt like 15 yards to another tree and did that a couple times before jumping back down and circling around to try to get them again. So I'm thinking sometimes, like in the forest, when those tracks disappear, like Nuxium was saying, that it's no different than like a mountain lion just doing that as well. How do you feel
That's
about that?
I could see that. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And there's some of these encounters that I hear, that these creatures are coming out of portals and stuff like that. And then that's just another thing. Like there's a guy that I know, and he's very very credible, and he said that he's seen one of these dogman creatures come out of what looked like a void. It's like a watery appearance or something, and this thing come out of it. And And I believe that the dogmen do climb trees because I found trees just recently. Actually, I found a couple today where there's scratch marks 8 to 10 feet off the ground, and that's the only place where there's scratches at on these trees. All the way around the tree, the trees, this whatever it was, scraped all the bark off from around the tree in a circle, and you could see where its claws had dug into it, like just
Uh,
like puncture holes where it had punctured into the tree.
do you think maybe it was a territorial thing it was doing, or do you think it was something maybe how like cats and other animals will take their claws and just do that to keep them
Sharpen
sharp?
them.
Yeah,
I think it does that, and it's also a territorial thing.
uh,
But
that's,
the weirdest thing is, right here in my area, we've had this discussion before. There's Bigfoot and Dogman in this area, and they're not enemies. They're working together. Why would two apex species kill each other off when they could both benefit from working together? And I've been thinking about this a lot more. What if people find these blinds, or so to speak, that the Bigfoot make out of these trees and stuff? What if the Bigfoot lays up in one of these blinds and the dog man run the prey to the Bigfoot? The Bigfoot jumps out and prey. Well, Bigfoot gets the first picks, and then the dog man gets the scraps. And they watch the young for the Bigfoot, or however it may be.
what's super interesting about that, and this, if you haven't heard about it, might blow your mind because it blew my mind when Ernie told me about it, because I dove more into afterwards, because he was telling me about how monkeys, but baboons and chimpanzees do this as well. They go into villages and areas that they do live, and they steal children, they feed on them, but they also steal puppies and wild wolf pups and wild dog pups. And what they do is, as they get older, they've raised these wolf pups and wild dogs to become their friends, more or less, and they feel part of the family, and they protect these monkeys or baboons as they get older. Okay, but then the natural wolves and such still don't, they have a problem with them, because it's no different than like domesticated dogs. Wolves and coyotes don't like domesticated dogs because they look at you as being weak because you've been tamed by humans, and they'll occasionally, they've been caught playing with them, but they usually try to eat domesticated dogs, meaning they lead them out, one of them to come play, and then the pack of coyotes or wolves will come and get them. So what I've been really trying to potentially build a theory off, because it's still in hypothesis mode, is that imagine if the, whatever people would like to call them, the forest people, the Sabbath, the Sasquatch, are stealing dogman pups, right? And then raising
Mm-hmm.
them as their own to guard their young and help them hunt. But yet those ones that they have also could fend off other dogmen, which would explain why in some encounters people see these dogmen battling each other too.
Exactly right. Yeah, and me and you kind of both talked about that a little bit, and yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Taking the pups, raising them as a domesticated dog, so to speak. And I think they may could use them. The Bigfoot used the dog man to fight off rival clans of whatever it may be. And I think that they use them to watch over themselves. I think that some of the Bigfoot watch over the clans, but I think the dog man do it too.
Which would make sense. And back to what you were saying is, yeah, obviously, I would say if they're in the areas and the dogman does exist, like the Bigfoot exists, then yeah, they're not going to necessarily go out of their way to battle with each other, meaning it's no different than a grizzly bear that comes across a black bear or a pack of wolves. Yeah, there's confrontations sometimes, but more or less, there's really no need for that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Because
exactly
as
right.
a predator, especially if you're solo, getting injured is a death sentence, okay? And a lot of times, even in your own pack, yeah, there's some packs that will still feed you like hyenas and wild dogs, but then there's other packs that will cannibalize you if you're no longer of purpose to the pack's orientation. So again, whereas if you're, a herbivore or something, you can bed down and heal yourself, okay? But the problem is, like you were saying, predators aren't really going to go out of their way to clash with each other like that. And even in the territorial disputes with the grizzly bear, they flex, but usually one of the other bears runs off before they start really beating the crap out of each other. Occasionally, you get the huge royal rumble, but again,
that's like a grizzly bear versus a grizzly bear, and that's not a grizzly bear versus a pack of wolves or etc. Like I don't know, it's a big difference. There's just too much of a risk for injury, I feel like.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and if if one of these dog men, gets hurt by another dog man, it could go back to the Bigfoot if the Bigfoot are using them, and the Bigfoot take care of it, and
Yes,
they can use the other ones.
exactly. And also, a lot of people don't realize, talking some more science here, is every predator that eats meat, okay, has bacteria in their mouths. All right. And
Hmm.
give an example. Yeah, we all brush our teeth, hopefully, and floss. We'd like to think. Yet I don't encourage this, but everyone's had plaque that when you're flossing, and that stuff doesn't smell good. Okay, now imagine if you are not brushing your teeth. Okay, and I'll give you an example. I've heard of a crazy encounter where there was a man eating crocodile, and the villagers went and ended up finding it. But way before they found the crocodile, all they could smell was, and as they got closer and did see the crocodile, it was sitting there with its mouth open. So what they were smelling from the distance away was decay. Okay, and a lot of people don't realize that. Yeah, the reason shark attacks are fatal is obviously if they rip your leg off and you lose an artery. Okay, yes, that is
Sepsis.
fatal. That is fatal. But the majority of the time is when it bites in. If it hits your bone, shark smells are full with bacteria. Look at
Yep.
Komodo dragons.
Yeah,
Okay,
Komodo dragons. That's what I was about to say.
or
You
any
get bit by one of
reptile.
them, you're screwed.
Even if you get bit by an iguana, a pet iguana, like same thing. Like animals have a bacteria. Your pet cat, that's why they say don't let your dog lick your face, more or less. So what I'm trying to say is, again, that's another big reason why predators don't want to really screw with each other, because if you are biting into somebody else, they're ripping out flesh, and it's just not good. Okay. And that's what happens. Look at people that, or injuries that happen to animals. And here's another great example. I'm a nerd. So I was watching something about an ankylosaurus where paleontologists found it, and more or less what had happened, because the bone was shaped so strangely, there was a bacteria or an infection that got into the bone. So even though the bone healed, it never healed up, and then that bacteria was into the tail spike, which was bone, and it got into the rest of it, and that's what ended up killing. So you see what I'm saying? And that was from a predatory battle where something bit that spike off, like a T-Rex or something, and all that nasty bacteria in its mouth got in there. So again, I just find that interesting because it just brings some more merit to why predators don't really want to clash with each other.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's it. You hit the nail to a T, my friend.
Terrifying stuff for sure. Because, like I said, I'm a nerd and I try to approach this in all ways, but I'm very scientific in regards, and I always try to look at the scientific stuff first before then having to step outside of the box and be like, all right, well, this doesn't check any of the scientific cues, in regards of what could really be occurring. Because, like I said before, I do believe cave hyenas are still popping around, and the short-faced cave bear again. Like I preach, a lot of people don't realize the cave bear spent around 90% of its life in the cave systems. Okay, well, the cave systems haven't changed environmentally that much in the past 11,000 years, and nor in the territory that they roamed has the environment that much either. So, okay, that's a huge animal. It comes out, it gets its food, it brings it back into the cave, and then it roams around the cave systems. So I do believe they're still probably definitely kicking around. The dire wolf in the 1890s, you got the ringdocus, which looked either like a hyena or a dire wolf, and that's not even that long ago. That's not 11,000 years ago. That's a couple hundred. Okay.
Hmm.
And then you got the dire wolf, which recently our environmentalist was talking about how there's been cattle mutilations in carcasses where a dire wolf's tooth is the only tooth that fits perfectly. Again, so if these animals, and people are seeing him, and you got the Dinopithecus, the enormous baboon that looks like a werewolf. I believe 98% that's coming into play, with at least probably half of what people are seeing is either baboons, hyenas, or remnants of that. But then you have the stuff like you were just speaking about, which comes into play as well. And then that's why it's super important to have other individuals such as yourself that can specialize more into that aspect and have more
of an understanding of that, and then be able to deal with those type encounters, because yeah, I'm able to document those and process in my head what's occurring, but I don't specialize really in that aspect. I like to say I try to spend a lot of time, as just stated to you, looking at potential existing animals and also ancestors that fit the description a lot of times of what people see too.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. It never hurts, to look in the fossil record, for stuff that could explain what's really going on too. And I think some cases that can be the case of what people are seeing. Absolutely, absolutely. But there's still another piece of the puzzle that's not lining up. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
And I think that's why we all still need to keep on piecing together what's happening, because say like quote unquote the dog man, well, a hyena, when someone's seeing a hyena, well, there was North American hyenas and people have had pet spotted hyenas, and those are enormous, okay? Especially one that doesn't have to deal with other predators like lions and such. They're just going to keep growing, and they're not canines. They're not cats. They're related to mongoose and civets. Again, dire wolves aren't related to any sort of modern day canine, nor would be a cave bear, nor would be a Dinopithecus. So if you or I or anybody else is to get DNA from any of those, it's not going to come back canine. I think, like I was saying, a lot of times when people are saying it, hey, I saw something that looked like an enormous hyena, it really could still be an ancestor of that, or maybe a spotted hyena that's been escaped or let loose, because if someone doesn't have a trained eye, all those look like canines, and I like to use this as an example, and I'll use it again before we get your opinion on the topic and let you back to what you're doing. But say if you and I didn't know what a kangaroo was, right? And we were in Australia and no one had ever documented what a kangaroo was, and we're out hunting or doing whatever primitive ancestors of ours would have been doing at the time, and we see this thing in the bushes pop its head up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, look at his chest now. It's got a jacked up looking chest like a human bodybuilder. Okay. It's got pointy ears. It's got a long canine looking snout. And if the light hits it right, yeah, its eyes are going to glare. So would that not say, look like, oh my goodness, that's like a dog man or a canine man or a wolf man right there? But yet we know it's a kangaroo. You see what I'm saying? So I think that, yeah, if someone doesn't have a trained eye and saw a giant baboon, which there are giant baboons still in existence, running around with their mane going everywhere and their crazy teeth, and then their quadrupedal and bipedal, which could explain some of the track patterns we have, and their back feet look a lot like bear kind of tracks, which is interesting. They have articulated hands to open up windows and open up car doors, and I just find it pretty interesting.
That is very, very interesting. And I think that you know I think some of the hyena stuff could be, very well could be, escaped pets or escaped from a zoo or something. But yet again, you have to look at the X factor. Could be a remnant of a ancient prehistoric creature at the same time. Um, and along with that, you you can't really mistake, a wolf type creature. Trying to figure out how to word this. Trying to, like, if you mistake a wolf type creature from a baboon, you can still kind of tell that a baboon is a
Yes.
primate, like, but not can. I mean, yeah, I could see where the teeth come in, where it looks more like a canine snout. Um, baboons don't really have pointed ears, to my knowledge, do they? I don't know. I've never really
They're
seen a
not
baboon.
directly,
I
like
couldn't
you
tell you.
said, completely long, like on the top, but they do have some, pointed ears off to the side. And the yellow baboon, I believe, and a couple other species have adapted to have night vision just because of leopards they have to deal with. And yeah, they do have massive manes and such. But like you said, to someone that's got a trained eye, they should be able to distinct that. But I would say to somebody that doesn't maybe have a distinguished trained eye, if they saw that running across the road real quick or looking into their window, I guess that could potentially look like a werewolf.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, I could see that now. Yeah, that is true. I'm not a zoologist. I'm a cryptozoologist.
Yes. Same thing with me. I'm just a journalist. Like I said, I'm a nerd and I like to learn, and I do talk to our science team as much as possible. And like I stated, I try to watch as much science and read as much stuff as possible. And I'm just trying to play the healthy, what is it, devil's advocate, meaning like just trying to understand like logically first, because you know how science is, and I want to try to continue to speak to scientific people. So I just try to logically figure out stuff first, just stating, like I said to you, potentially if someone doesn't have an updated eye. I mean, baboons even have the bent back canine kind of looking legs, and a lot of these type encounters are quicker, where say a 5 or 6 year old boy or girl screams out, "Mommy or Daddy, there's a wolf man looking monster looking in my window," or something, and the parents come in and it's gone. That quick kind of interaction like that, I feel like that could look like a monster wolf man, especially to a younger kid or somebody again that doesn't know what a baboon looks like, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that does make sense. And I would encourage anybody, if you do have an encounter like that, look online, look up a picture of any of these creatures,
Yes.
Kenny's talking about, look up a baboon, look up a hyena, and compare it to what you've seen.
Thanks, Noah, and I appreciate that, man. And that's very well stated, just like in general with everything else you stated. So it's just important because it's not always someone's fault to be miseducated about a topic, but like you said, everything we spoke about or everything in general, it's out there. And just because you and I spoke about it, I encourage people always to do their own research. And as you just stated, just look at all those animals, just understand. And yeah, sure, if you 100% think you didn't see any of those, then excellent. Make sure to,
Yeah.
inform us so that way we can again make sure to document that.
If it doesn't match any of the the natural behaviors that it does, it's most likely something that nobody knows about.
Exactly. That's so great. Well, I look forward next time to again getting to pick your mind some more and hearing your thoughts as to what occurs with all this, because you're right down in the heart of, well, I like to, Aaron Deese dubbed the Dogman Triangle, which is super cool. But as I've done more research, I've noticed an area, basically the heart, and I like to call it Werewolf Square, meaning it's basically a square where there's parts of Wisconsin, West Virginia, and parts of Pennsylvania. There's all of Wisconsin, Michigan, Tennessee, Kentucky, all like grouped up like right in that spot where all this stuff's happening, and you're right down in there. So no, you
I'm
definitely,
right smack dab in the middle of it, my friend.
yeah, you definitely got to keep us posted on all that, man.
Oh yeah, I plan to, and I bring nothing but the cold hard truth, and and my mission is to raise awareness about these creatures. I know they exist, and and I just want to encourage anybody that's listening to this. If you're a skeptic or not skeptic, non-believer, let me tell you this. Never judge a book by its cover. And that's something that I've always stuck with. There's things in this world that we don't understand and we don't comprehend, and I'm boots on the ground researching all the time, and I'm getting close. I'm getting closer every time, and I hope y'all catch me on the next one, because me and Kenny's got another encounter of mine that I have to share with photographic evidence of this creature.
Thank you for everyone who once again stopped by tonight for this episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on Star Fox Radio. Harley and I will be having much more in the oven cooking up soon. So if you did enjoy this, please like, subscribe, share it, and feed the algorithm. I will see you on the next one.